I'm going to read a little article I wrote. It talks about playing from the heart. You'll understand better what I'm talking about as I read this. Pool players are people too. People are emotional. Emotions affect every physical action we take in life. Those things in mind, it only stands to reason that the virtual outcome of a match, a game, or even a single shot can to some degree be directed by the way we feel at the moment we lean over the table. A prime example for you pool fanatics who've seen The Hustler would be when Fast Eddie Felson gets upset at the young hustler at Arthur's pool room and exclaims, "Just for that, I'm going to beat you flat," and proceeds to win 10 games in a row. The result was getting his thumbs broken for showing too much of his game to the locals, but I think you can see my point. Sometimes a simple gesture or a few words from someone can completely change what you are set to do at the table. We all wish we had the ability to do what Eddie did when the kid told him, "You better not miss, friend," and just run 10 racks in a row. But unfortunately, for the majority of us, the will to do something like that far outweighs our ability to do so. Also to consider is the fact that these emotions affect everyone differently. Less experienced players often fall apart when confronted with such a statement because now they really don't want to miss. All the blood rushes to their head and they start playing the game from the heart instead of from the mind. Some players respond well when this happens and play way over their heads. This is the greatest feeling in the world, and to some degree, it is, after all, what we play for. To beat your opponent, even while under the pressure of an ultimatum, which directly involves one's own ego, is like being carried off in a crowd on their shoulders. If we could have that feeling all the time, life would be so much more fun. Sadly, though, that feeling is few and far between, and for many lesser players, almost never comes. This is the problem with allowing your emotions to run you over and control your actions. Would you have tried that 3-rail bank in a hill game where your ego not challenged? Wouldn't we all like to take a shot back now and again after the fact when we realize that it was such a low percentage shot? The whole point that I'm trying to make here is that there are many people out there with less than admirable morals that like nothing more than to try and get inside your head and ruin your game. Some people call this sharking. I personally think it is the lowest tactic a person can resort to for a win. The best way to deal with this situation when it happens is to recognize it for what it is and do your best to ignore it and play your game the same way you normally would. If you've been playing really good, try not to fall into the mindset that you can make every shot because a good safety is a quick way to let your opponent know that his remarks aren't going to make you do something stupid. This will oftentimes intimidate the other player because now he knows that he's not dealing with a fool who can be manipulated. Play the game with all the desire and emotion to win. Don't leave your brain out of the game. It's the part that sends the signals to your arms. Okay, with that in mind, let me discuss another thing known as unnecessary risk. What I mean by this is those situations in the game when the game is not on the line necessarily, and we try to make a high-risk, low-percentage shot to win a game. Most of you out there know what I'm talking about. Yet in a game situation, you fail to recognize it until after the fact. The most common mistake I see people make is when they attempt to make a difficult or nearly impossible kick shot at the 8-ball, which could easily result in a scratch for loss of game. Many higher caliber shooters compound their foolishness by doing this against weaker players that aren't likely to run out, even with ball in hand. What I am getting at is that sometimes you must weigh out the risk involved in taking the shot against the risk of the other player making a run. Even when you're playing a great player, you still have to consider other options. Playing a ball-in-hand safety against a better player is sometimes wiser than trying to make a shot that could cost you the game via scratch, or knocking the 8 in the wrong pocket, or pocketing it on a bad hit. How many times have you beaten yourself this way, only to think about the way the table was laying, and realize it would have been a tough run-out for them even with ball in hand? Plus, consider that on a good number of attempted kick shots, the result is ball in hand anyway. Why even try to make the miracle shot when you have little chance for success and a great risk of disaster? Instead, as I mentioned earlier, a ball in hand safety is sometimes the smartest and safest shot. What is a ball in hand safety? It is conceding the ball in hand foul by not getting a good hit, but at the same time complicating the table for the other shooter as much as possible. Shooting at one of their balls and moving it to an undesirable area is oftentimes very effective in slowing or stopping a possible run out. Just shooting a ball to a rail or clustering them together is enough to make them have to work a little harder. If they have balls on a rail and clustered already, yet also have a ball lying near a pocket, shooting the ball near the pocket in or away from the pocket can also be a good idea because it takes away a possible option that can help them make shapes or break out balls. It opens another pathway for you as well. You never know which side of the 8 ball you could wind up on if they miss. Another example of an unnecessary risk does not involve the 8 ball at all, but instead could involve your last ball or two. At times you will run off everything on the table and find yourself unable to break out a ball or to get position on it so that you can pocket it. Many players will attempt to kick or bank the ball multiple rails without success, and oftentimes the ball will wind up in an even worse position, or between it and the cue ball flying around the table, they manage to knock the 8 ball in. Once again, this is foolish, especially if you're playing someone that is not likely to run out on you. If you can hit your object ball and send it to a more desirable position on the table, it can make things a whole lot easier on you when you return to the table. In other words, if it's tied up on the rail and you can't hit it on a good hit it on a bad hit and get it out there where you can do something on the next trip. Even if it gives up ball in hand, if you're playing a shooter that you don't think can get out. Okay. This makes it more difficult for your opponent to play safe on you, and it compels them to make a run for fear that you will if they let you back to the table. If you send your last ball careening around the table only to land on a rail near the side pocket or on an end rail near the middle, you're giving your opponent a possible fail-safe in case they miss. This gives them too much opportunity to try foolish shots when they know you will have a tough shot from almost anywhere on the table. My point here is, make the other player afraid to miss because of how easy it will be for you to win if they do. It is also a great feeling to sit on the side and wait for them to make a mistake with the knowledge that it would be hard for them to hook you. Now, by this time, you should have chosen one of these things I have suggested. These situations come up all the time. How do you come to the decision to go for the safe thing to do, or to try for it all on the miracle shot? This is where you as an individual must stop and think about the overall picture. Consider all of these things when coming to your decision. 1. Is a shot you're thinking about trying within your capabilities, or is it nearly impossible? Is there a high risk of a scratch or pocketing the 8 ball on a bad hit? Is my opponent skilled enough to run these balls out where they lay with ball in hand? If the other player's chances of making a run are slim, can I improve position of my remaining balls so that I can run out if they eventually miss? Can I make the table more complicated for them if I decide to concede the ball in hand with a bad hit? Are the balls laying on such a bad way that I would only improve the other player's chances of making a run by moving them? In this case, handing them the cue ball is sometimes a wise choice. And finally, is this one shot going to win or lose the entire match? This is really when all the previous questions should seriously be considered. If you really believe your opponent will run out on you with ball in hand no matter what, or even without ball in hand, the choice is to probably attempt to make the shot. Otherwise, under all other circumstances, I would recommend you do something that will not cause you to beat yourself. Making your opponent earn the win is a lot less disappointing than doing something